I think we're live. Hold on. Yeah, I think we're live. We're
you
live
go.
now, guys.
We're live, yeah.
I
How's
think
everybody? How's everybody doing? How's everybody going? I don't even ask.
Are we
Let's
live?
just say the last couple of weeks financially, everything's been down, but this is not something that's new. We've been talking about the need for some sort of correction, and I think a lot of great buying opportunities are starting to present themselves as long as you're willing to hold your nose and buy. Right now is not a bad time to start adding to positions. If the
Except for
conviction is
Enphase,
there.
according to you,
Hold
you
on.
talk a lot of shit on Twitter, bro. And
He's talking a lot of shit.
We're here, bro. We're here.
In fact, I do want to get to that in a second, but I
We
just want to
should
point
get to
out, Amit decided that we're not having a podcast because he couldn't show up.
No,
Okay.
he said
The
he
fucked
can't
up
make
thing.
it.
The funny thing is because the way he said the show must go on. He reminds me of like what's his name from All in Pod who went away on vacation.
What's Jason Calcanis?
Yeah, he goes away on vacation. He's like, and we usurped the pod. That's what we did because we have our own fucking channel now, motherfucker.
Right. He's like, well, no, to his credit, he did say you guys can do it if you want, but like normally he'll leave a link and stuff.
Yeah, but I think he told Kelly, and Kelly's saying that nope, yeah, there was no pod. Can't believe this guy. Absolutely, do not believe anything Amit says.
Don't believe anything.
In fact, we are opening up the spot to anyone who has a pulse because that's all Amit does on this show. So go ahead, come on in, be number 4. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'll post the link in the I'll post the link the stream out in the
there
chat.
you go. Like Kelly join. How about that?
Yeah, come on, Kelly, join, man.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a good they're dating, so she can join.
Right?
All right, so off to KRIS talking a lot of shit.
Oh, I'm not talking shit, okay? I am just reminding everyone of my investing prowess. That's all I'm doing. Just reminding people that
have you ever heard of hubris? Have you ever heard? Because it's gonna rain fucking blood on your portfolio.
I deserve at least a little bit of credit because I have been saying this for the last 6 months. Every single time that this high interest rate environment will eventually impact companies.
First of all, the last 6 months have been.
But I mean, to be fair, anybody can say that.
Not for Enphase. Not for Enphase.
Can say that
for one stock. Is this what this is your whole thing for one stock?
I mean, I get a lot of things right. Enphase was one of them, and why not highlight that?
All right, sure. He's got it right, folks.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, for the record, KRIS is the guy that'll kick you when you're down. Laugh and laugh over your grave.
I am not. I rarely do it. I rarely do that. But you know what it was? Because I rewatched our first episode where we spoke about this, and you shitted on Lululemon. So I was like, okay.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
I don't remember. So you got to remind me about these things. I like to shit on everything.
The internet doesn't forget anything, dude.
Yeah. So it was funny. Me and the wife were watching today, and it was like Enphase and then Lululemon. I was like, man, Lululemon, that's the one you want to watch out for. And so I think it's very interesting. It's the dynamic that happened with Enphase versus Lululemon. But to me, it seemed like a more reasonable thing because higher interest rates does not prevent women from going out and buying micro spandex. It's a very trendy clothing brand, whereas
also way lower ASP to buy
versus Enphase, which is going to be materially impacted by a lot of the higher interest rates. So that was the whole thesis behind Enphase coming out. But look, just to give credit to VITALY, you even said like the price of Enphase could go in half too. Like as I was watching it, it wasn't like, oh, this is $300 and it's going to go to $600 by next week. You were very poignant with your conversation as well, VITALY. So you said it could get cut in half, which is exactly what happened. So that's why you have to tune in to Finance Junkies regularly, because just because we have a thesis today doesn't mean that thesis can't change 6 months from now, especially if conditions change, right?
Some people would call that flip-flopping.
Yeah,
no, it's not.
No, it's new information is fine, but the thesis has not changed. Okay, interest rates have not changed the thesis of what's going on in solar. Whether it's affected for the next year or two, that's a different thing. That's a whatever. We can say that's an interest rate thing, and for the next couple of years. But even in high interest rates, if it stabilizes, I bet you anything Enphase does well. The problem is we're not stabilized yet. We might be going up. Who the hell knows when we're pausing? That's the issue. As soon as it's stabilized, I think Enphase is going back. I'm telling you, it's going to go back up just because as soon as everybody can predict their cash flows for the future, it's done.
Well,
and
I
if
think-
you know, for example, if you know, like let's say right now I told you, because everybody's expecting rates to come down, but if I told you rates are going to be 5% for the next 10 years, everybody's just going to put that into the equation when they're buying anything. That's what's going to happen, right? When I was buying properties and I was paying 8-9% for houses I was buying, that was part of the equation. I didn't stop buying properties because they were 8-9%. The difference now is it came so fast, right? It came basically over a year. That's the only difference.
Well, I think that can't be understated enough. Is that when the Fed said we're going to pause and we will eventually maybe have one more rate hike? I think that's telling people, like even me, and when we were talking on Twitter, if I didn't have solar right now, I would probably be waiting until the rates went down. Even if I wanted it, I would say.
Have you seen my threads, by the way? Have you seen my threads?
Threads? What is that?
I haven't been on Threads.
I'm sorry.
I haven't been on Threads.
I'm saying threads. My tweets. Mark got me. Mark got me. Anyway, have you seen my tweets or my X's?
your posts? Your posts is
my X's. If you saw the whole solar thing, I have been talking to solar people, so I'm gonna have a couple.
No, I did see that. I saw that. Yeah,
I'm having a conversation tomorrow. I think at 11 o'clock, and another one on Tuesday at 12 or so. So anyway, I'm gonna find out exactly more details. But there are rates now at 5.99%. But they have finance charges. I don't know what that means, what they're charging extra. I have no idea yet. So I'm going to find out. And if I wanted a cash option where there's no finance charges, but obviously there's an interest rate, it's 8.99%. So actually, and someone told me 7.99, a different company. So it's not that different when I got it. Remember we were talking about it? I had 6.5. So yes, 8.99 is higher. There is a bigger rate, but it's not something that would stop me considering my rates for electric. And we were talking on Twitter. My rates for electric just went up 22%. That's insane. Right. I honestly, I don't even pay attention because most of the time it's covered with solar. But I was like, why is my bill like it's abnormally high this time? And I was like, okay, I'm obviously I have a pool now. I'm using more electric. I have a heat pump. I get it. Okay, but then I saw the actual rate at 16.5 cents instead of the 13.5. I was like, holy shit, these assholes just raised it without actually like
but
sending an email.
Well, where you live, see, we have time of use, and part of time of use are different tiers of electricity. So up to say 1,600 kilowatt hours for the month, you pay one fee. Anything above that, you're into tier 2, where they charge you more per kilowatt hour. You go to tier 3, and it's like triple the price. I don't know if it's that way.
No, well, I'm not there because I produce a lot of energy and I offset it a lot. So I'm not even hitting the next tier. Does that make sense?
Right. But and that's what I was saying. That's what I responded to you on Twitter. Like, as long as you are making the same rate when you sell it back to them as they're charging you, you should come out even.
Well, no. So during the month, before the EVs, I was paying nothing. It was zero. It was literally $2.78 to be connected to the grid. That's it. $2.78.
Yeah.
Now with the EVs, they're 75 kilowatt batteries. So I drive anywhere, I'm filling up 30 kilowatts. So my solar can't keep up.
I know.
I got the solar before I got the cars. So that's why I'm looking to upgrade again. And so all these financial things are going to play. And me and you, Carlos, Chris, you're welcome to join us. But we're going to do an actual episode with the math after I get all of these numbers and what I'm going to be actually doing. Because I don't like my rates going up 22%. I think you can call it inflation, Chris, whatever you call it. But I like the fact that I locked in 2018 a perpetual rate for my electric.
But there's almost
and it never goes up. It's always the same amount.
But there's almost no energy source that is not gonna change based on demand or based on just market conditions. It's gonna go up. It's gonna go up.
No, you're missing the point. As soon as you get solar, that's it. It's not going up. But I bought cars. I put a heat pump in. I did things after the solar. So that's why I'm being affected right now by electricity prices, because I'm back using part of the grid.
You're using power on the grid. Using power off the grid. And look out here, even with NEM 3.0, if they lower the rate that I am allowed to sell them the energy back, it's basically creating a reverse incentive, right? It's a way of taxing you for having solar. As much as they're incentivizing you on the front end, they're getting their money back in the long run by charging you more or not giving you as much money when you sell it back to them, or forcing you to sell it back to them when it's high and buy it back, or sell it back when it's low and buy it back when it's high. It's ridiculous.
Well,
here's
let me respond to this because I know what you were getting at. But the NEM 3 is going to lead. NEM3 is going to lead to more battery adoption because in California you do have something that you can sell back to the grid. But the way it's going to work is that during peak demand, if you have a battery and your system is smart, like an Enphase or a Tesla system, it'll put the energy when it's cheap and sell it back to the grid when it's expensive. So NEM3 does not stop that. This is still allowed to happen.
NEM3 does the opposite. It forces you to buy power from the grid, even if you already have a battery installed. We went over this on the last one. Like they'll basically take the energy from your battery and then force you to buy it back from them when it's higher.
No.
Yes.
Well, we were going over that there is a possibility they're doing something, but no. Right now you can have a battery.
Oh,
you can
right now,
your energy.
Right now, yes.
You can store your energy and you can sell it back at time like peak use. So that
but they're voting. They're voting in September.
Okay.
I'll find
it might change.
They're voting in September to basically de-incentivize even the battery portion of it.
Right, we talked about that, but that's not law yet. Right now, that's not what's happening.
Not law yet, but this tells you what they're pushing for, right? I mean, basically, they're trying to look. A bunch of people adopted it. I feel like they needed to do that to just say that they're going green, and then when enough people adopted it, and it's starting to affect, say, the revenue that's coming in, if they can't raise rates on everybody else, they're going to find a way of taxing those people using.
They're going to try to gouge.
They're not going to let you get anything for free. The only real way that you can do this is if you oversize your system so much. Like this is for me too, the same thing. I had 107% of my energy consumption without any EVs. And I don't just have EVs. I have the Plaid, which is 100 kilowatt hours, which uses more energy and has a bigger battery. And then we have the Model Y, plus the pool pump, the heating's electric, all that stuff, and working from home, computers. So I'm curious to see. I reached out to a couple of installers about just getting a couple of backup batteries, to get some of the Enphase batteries here.
Well, this is what I'm talking about.
Even for like this hurricane, like I posted it on Twitter. This is going to sell so many batteries. California hasn't seen a hurricane in 84 years. And a bunch of my friends that have Powerwalls, the Powerwalls automatically powered up to, charged up to 100%. So like some of my friends will be fine. But when enough of those people tell their friends, it just becomes a snowball effect. Like I would love to see what the battery adaptation rate is next quarter, just as a result of this.
So, Chris, I mean, I want you to ask your question too, but basically, this is
that was the same. That was the exact question that I was going to ask, Carlos. Like, does this force you to basically get more battery storage as part of your equation to make sure that your solar investments make sense, right? So, right now, if you can take the energy that you're getting and put it in your battery, use the battery over time, now you're basically not having to ever really contract with the energy companies. And as I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos and doing a lot of due diligence, I realize that the batteries are getting more and more efficient and they're actually getting smaller. So I think to some degree, eventually people will have the opportunity, like, I don't want to say every home, but a lot of homes will have battery backup as a feature that you're going to be able to utilize. The only question that I have, and hopefully Vitaly, maybe when you do your solar video, you can ask, where is Tesla in all of this? Because one of the things I've been reading is their Tesla white paper that basically has been outlining some of their future growth prospects and how much adoption that Tesla is actually seeing. Because from what I'm seeing, you're looking at about 20 to 30% of the solar market share at this point going towards Tesla. And because so many people already have that name and that brand recognition behind Tesla and they own a Tesla car, they may opt to just go with a Tesla solution rather than any of the other solutions.
I mean, first of all, that's possible, but that's why I have a lot of Tesla. I mean, so it's not like I'm not.
That's the investment side, but saying like in terms of as a risk to Enphase. Yeah. I mean, Vitaly and I have talked about. I actually want to do a full just podcast on that, like in terms of like the real threat to Enphase. I think is Tesla, because Tesla has 4 million vehicles on the road right now, and they're going to have say 6 million by the end of the year. They could have up to 5 or 6 or 9 million vehicles soon. If even a small percentage of those get solar, they're going to get Tesla solar. So it is a way of getting people into the mode that they don't have to. There's really no cost of acquisition for them. It's an email. And I think you and I were talking about this, Chris, and you made a good point that if Tesla starts to offer a bulk discount where they say get a Tesla car and Tesla solar with a Tesla charger, we'll charge you one price for everything.
And a Tesla battery. And a Tesla battery.
Think about that. So if you get a car, right?
That would be smart.
You get a Model Y, $40,000. They give you a discount on the solar because it costs them nothing, right? And then they make money on the energy arbitrage. They also sell you a power wall, and you pay one price per month. It's not two separate loans. It's all wrapped up under one, under Tesla financing, and then they force you to get Tesla insurance for the whole. I mean, there's a lot of ways that they could just flip a switch and immediately start eating some of Enphase's market share. And as a side point,
so before you leave this market share, hold on, before you leave this market share, I don't want to leave the market share thing. Remember, the market is growing. Okay.
Yes.
Even if they're going to eat the market share, there is 3 players that are of any importance, in my opinion. Obviously, SolarEdge and Enphase own the space. There's no denying it. Tesla's not there yet. They own 90% of the space. Tesla's 1 or 2%, something like that. At some point, fine, Tesla's 20%, 30%, and Enphase is 30% instead of 40%. But the market is like at 20% penetration then. This is a big difference, guys. Like Enphase, SolarEdge, and Tesla can still do what they're going to do and have exponential growth and lose market share. That is very possible.
It's the same as Tesla having compressed gross profit margin and still making more money, right? So I agree with you. As long as the market continues to expand, which it will, Enphase could lose market share, and other players can come up and take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% market share. And Enphase can still do well. What is it?
Coin miles. No, I mean my bigger.
I asked about that. I asked about that to somebody, and I could tell you the story about it. How they chuckled at me.
Well, actually, I do got to show you guys something. Real quick, because this was sent to me a few days ago.
So Chris, by the way, you show that, but Chris, I know you were trolling because you're a good troll like me, but I hope on your own roof you do not put Hoy miles.
Don't do that, dude, and don't go up there.
We'll see.
Don't go install that shit yourself. Dude.
Well, the thing is, it's like this. It's like, why do people buy A.O. Smith water heaters? That's a big brand. I don't know if you've heard of water heaters. If you're in the real estate game, you know you're going to put an A.O. Smith because I don't have to worry about it. I'm not trying to get a knockoff Chinese brand into the thing because if that spills or leaks, I'm in trouble, and it doesn't have as good of a warranty. All of a sudden, you're doing something part of the home. You care about the thing that goes in the home. Okay. Obviously, if it's a rental and you're trying to do something else, that might be different. But if it's your house, you have to worry about the contracts, the services. Like, you have a gardener, you have someone doing your plumbing, you have someone doing your electrical. Like that's part of owning a house. And if I am banking on some no-name thing for a major infrastructure part of my house, like I better be really confident about it that I'm saving the 50% of these. You know what I'm saying? I better be saving a shit ton of money.
My bigger concern is just you're right. The field itself is opening up to a much wider audience. My bigger concern is just around margin compression for Enphase itself, because with a lot of new entrants coming into the market, you're going to have kind of like 2 levels of competition. You're going to have other companies that are making microinverters. I know that right now they're very small in market share. They're not all over the place, but they are gaining some traction. Okay. Not a lot, but they're gaining some traction. So that's number one. The other thing is you've got competitors from the other competing technologies like the solar optimizers and the string inverters. They're also investing a lot in terms of growth for their particular technologies. So when you combine those 2 things, those are just 2 heavy things to compete against just one company. And so it's going right now on top of the quality, Enphase is by far the best quality product that's out there. I can't deny that, and no one can deny that. Their quality of customer service, the quality of product is on another level of high. The problem that I see with Enphase is that these other guys are starting to come in and actually make some reliable products, have some brand recognition behind them, and are growing their own particular market share. And they're doing it at prices that are much, much lower than what Enphase is currently offering.
Let me respond to this price thing, because Enphase was more expensive than SolarEdge for a long time. SolarEdge was the Goliath, by the way, in the industry. They were there first. They were getting traction. I think even now they make 4 times the revenue. It's just slower growth for them. My point is Enphase had the competition early on with SolarEdge, who was the Goliath, and they still priced their products higher. And people still paid for those products because at the end of the day, I'm telling you, if you have some sort of critical infrastructure in your house, you're not going to try to save $5,000 to go with someone who's not going to warranty it, take care of it, make sure that they're tomorrow. Like there's all these things that happen when you're doing all that stuff. It's not just buying a refrigerator. This is something that runs your whole house. You know what I'm saying?
But
So-
but again, it's not the homeowners that are buying these things. It's the solar installers. The reason why Enphase took that market share from the solar in solar, while they were able to come up with a higher price point, is because they would guarantee those installers that they would be less service calls to make. SolarEdge does have pretty shitty service. I had SolarEdge for a while. I bought an Enphase system. If you guys know the story, they installed a SolarEdge thinking that I wouldn't notice. And if it worked fine, I wouldn't have noticed, but I had massive problems with it till it failed. And then I eventually looked back at my contract and forced them to put the Enphase stuff. I dealt with SolarEdge. They are horrible in terms of customer service. They just keep pushing the buck. They
and
say
hold on, that's a big
fault. They say
company.
it's somebody else's
That's a
fault.
big company that can actually have good service if
Yeah,
they
they
change
can.
their. And then we're talking about little companies
Yeah.
who are starting up, trying to compete with Enphase. Obviously, there's no way they're going to compete on the terms of the service and the installer network.
No,
It's
but
impossible.
actually no, they actually can. And I remember this from back in the day. Like, again, for people that know me, I used to work as an alarm installer, and everything was ADT.
Yeah,
at the time.
you installed our alarms
Yeah, we installed
in my house.
alarm
That's how we
systems,
met.
Yeah. Well, no, that's not how we met. But I used to install like burglar alarms, fire alarms, in residential, commercial, as well as government. And we were using a specific type of panel. Most of the time it was ADT out there, and we were able to undercut them because we were able to offer a more personalized service than someone like an ADT. When you're in like that big corporate machine, it's a little bit different than getting somebody to come out like on the same day to just come out and see you because you're a smaller company starting up. And one of the companies that really started to make inroads while I was in that business was Sloman's. And Sloman's was a very small company, and how they got customers were they gave you the stuff at almost cost. Like, they literally gave it to you at almost cost, or they would sell you a very basic system. They'd be like, hey, here's a basic alarm panel with like one door, one window, and a motion detector. And that was good for most people's needs. And then they would upsell you, and they also had very good service, because that's a way. And that was customer facing. Like, they were dealing directly with the customers. Enphase doesn't deal directly with the customers. They deal with the installers that deal directly with the customers. So what Enphase needs to do is guarantee not only a lifetime warranty, it's not going to cost you anything, and we're going to pick up the phone within 1 minute. We're going to help you fix the problem, and we're going to guarantee that you're going to have less of those. That's how they were able to win. Because I'm telling you,
better engineering.
If
I agree.
companies had to bet their entire business on SolarEdge, the reliability of their systems, and then the service when things go bad, it is a crapshoot every time you install.
But right now, companies do. SolarEdge actually has a bigger commercial business, by the
Yeah.
way. Enphase is almost non-existent commercial business. They're getting into that whole aspect.
I'd imagine they're just prioritizing the commercial, to be honest. I'd imagine they're prioritizing,
and it's growing a lot. Actually, it grew
in general.
20-30% this last quarter, by the way. So FYI.
The commercial installs that we did when we were doing alarms were way more profitable, and they had way less problems, because on those kinds of jobs, you can put everything in pipe. It's usually spec'd up by the architect. You can usually over design the system because the money's there. In a home, you're running wires in places. People are messing with things, and it's just not as clean. In a commercial install, you're usually inside the electric panel. You have a much cleaner area to install, and in general, you have less problems with them. And the monthly service that you can charge them, the monthly monitoring fee on alarms.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the commercial aspect, because I think KRIS is also ignoring. I don't know if you've known this, but they're now going into small commercial, basically, with their IQ8P. So this is a new product coming out this year. Once again, if a commercial is deciding to go solar, do they wait for better rates? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it might make sense for commercial to just go faster.
Well, yeah,
to
the amount of money, that they're saving. Here, but by the way, before I forget,
because they're doing it over us. They're assuming they're amortizing it over 30 years or whatever they're amortizing over so it's a different calculation than a homeowner going into it.
Do you guys see this?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Actually,
so that's a Sun Power system. This is a mutual friend of ours who VITALY, who we got him on board to buy a Tesla. Bought a Tesla, has a Tesla charger, screamed from the rooftops about Enphase, looked up Tesla. He said that the experience with Tesla trying to get them to come out to install was horrific. They were easily not the most expensive, but they were the longest time to install. They wouldn't let him. This is something that I didn't know. When he spec'd out to get his solar, he's like, well, what am I getting? What am I getting for, how many panels, how many this? They would say, no, you sign the contract first and we install what we think is important. He's like, what do you mean? I can't look at what's being installed in my house. They were like, no. So he said no to them. And that was what turned him off to Tesla. Then he went to an Enphase installer and got a couple of quotes, and they sold him a SunPower system. So throughout all of this, I've sold it like
Well,
8 Teslas,
SunPower
including
does
my
use
own.
Enphase inverters too, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the Enphase system, and he got a pretty decent sized battery. And so it's curious. I have not been able to successfully sell an Enphase system, and I've been a part of like 3 solar installs. I've not been able to successfully sell an Enphase system customer to customer. I've not been able to do it.
Right.
Even if I sold them on the idea of solar, you know what I mean?
I believe you.
So no, I definitely believe in solar, especially on the commercial end. But the thing is, I'm playing it a different way. I don't know if you guys heard of a company called Atcore by any chance? Any chance? Atcore?
Atcore? No.
Atcore. Let me just quickly show you guys, because I think these guys
Did
could
they
actually
put GPUs into solar panels?
They you guys can see my screen, right?
No, you want to?
They buy Enphase microinverters and resell them.
No,
I'll be right
actually,
back. I'll be right back.
they actually do a lot of the conduit and the
Yeah.
piping for a lot of
solar?
well, not just solar, but for a lot of industrial applications. So as an example, when you're hooking up anything to the grid, you're going to have conduits and you're going to have piping that's necessary, right? These guys are like the premier company that actually owns a lot of commercial market share. And in terms of like finances, they're like gold standard. They're growing pretty rapidly. They're not like super crazy growth, but they're growing rapidly, and they have a really good business model that's actually works very well. They are dealing with some short-term pains because they actually had a lot of gains, because they also do PVC piping as part of their business. So you see this like PVC piping and everything else. PVC piping during the COVID lockdowns had just gone like up like crazy. And so they were actually returning back to normal again from a pricing standpoint. So that's what's affecting them in the short term. But if you look at their outlook, it's really great. They're a very well-run company. They're doing a lot of share buybacks. They're very undervalued for what their current market cap is. We could take a quick look at that as well. And I think over time, a company like this is very underappreciated.
So I'm not saying this is a bad bet.
yeah.
I haven't seen this honestly, because
Yeah.
it's obviously core infrastructure for building, right? So, but I'm not sure how many players there are in this. But the reason you would buy Enphase and not this, and just let me make it clear, because there's like 2 players. This is why I keep going back to, we're building duopolies here, Chris. Do you at least agree on that aspect right now, that there's a SolarEdge and Enphase duopoly in terms of solar?
I do. I think that's
Because if you didn't agree with that, that's where it breaks apart.
But you're discounting Tesla in this too. They have a
I'm saying Tesla's coming up. They're on the come up. So let's say those 3, whatever. My point is, like, Atcore is not probably a monopoly in its industry. I would think not, but I could be wrong.
It depends on
But as far as PVC pipe, I think a lot of companies make PVC pipe because there's no technological advantage there, right? I'm actually looking for a technological advantage when I'm investing in something.
So let me take one step back, and I think maybe there will be a day where we can actually go through this company, because there's a lot more to it. They have a lot of patents for a lot of technologies that actually go into the construction of a lot of different industries, and from a commercial standpoint, they are one of the unsung heroes of actually getting. I was
gonna say my solar went down, but it didn't.
They're one of the unsung heroes of basically.
Let me fix my light.
Revolutionizing construction processes, and their materials and the way that they have things set up are really, really interesting to look at. There's like an entire episode that we'll do in the future just for that specific industry, but they are literally the Enphase equivalent, in my opinion, of that business of commercial what's that thing called? Conduit. And also they have
conduit,
fittings and like boxes.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff. Like they have they also own this really big company called Unistrut that they bought a long time ago. So they've been a serial acquirer of different companies that are primarily used in commercial applications. So even if it comes to like 5G internet, connecting 5G internet from tower to tower, you're going to need conduit. When it comes to commercial solar, like you want to do a commercial solar project somewhere, you're going to need conduit and piping. So what happens is everyone is focusing on solar, which is great. I'm not disagreeing with that, but people are ignoring all the piping and the needs. And while there are competitors that that are around that actually do the same thing, these guys just have much higher quality products at price points that are just really what is that thing called? Really impressive. And just like you guys did with the solar what is that installers where you had the conversations, that's what I did too, where I looked at a lot of like the electricians and said, okay, what kind of stuff do you guys like using? And one of the things is these guys actually just make the jobs very efficient, and they're very forward with the way that they operate their business, where they actually develop things based on the needs of the installer, right? So if you go to right now, one of the things that Enphase I know probably does is go to their respective installers and said, what can we do to make your life easier so that this way more installers pick Enphase as a system, you know? So these guys do the same thing for piping and conduit and electrical design, and they're able to sell their products pretty profitably. And they're still very young, very small. Well, they're not very young. Let me take that back. They're actually an older company, but they're still very much in a low environment in terms of valuation. Like their PE is like 7 right now, you know.
Well, to your point, if they make money regardless of who's installing, that's what I think. What I hear you saying is like, regardless of who's installing the solar on the roof, they need to have pipe, conduits, fittings, boxes, and they're all going to the same supplier. That is actually a good question to ask the relevant local installers in the area and see, where do you get your supplies? A lot of these guys will just go to Home Depot and pick up what they need for the day, right? But if they're really serious, so if you're installing more than, say, 4 or 5 systems a week, it makes sense to buy that stuff in bulk as well and just pull what you need for the job, because it's basically the same gear every time. The boxes and the fittings are basically the same. So that is an interesting like picks and shovels play. For me, it's like not as exciting. I don't know what the return would be on something like that. For me, it'd be hard to like value what is that company worth.
Did I miss it? Was there a dividend on this or no?
No, that was the next question. If there's a dividend on it, you could say, all right, cool. But
they're doing share buybacks, a lot of share buybacks. Okay. There's another one that I'm doing some research on, and Francisco in the chat just brought it up, which is called Wire, which is Encore Wire. They're once again, they're another part of the solar adoption curve that I think a lot of people should take a look at, because what they do is they make high density wire that you need to make solar happen. Like I think what it is, people, they look at the solar and that's like the face, but there's all these little intricacies and nuanced things that are attached to it. So as the industry grows, so will these picks and shovels plays grow with it, right? So it was the same thesis behind SMCI when Nvidia was getting bigger, because it was like, okay, everyone is focusing on the GPUs, but I also want to see who is making the servers specifically tailored toward AI GPUs, and that was SMCI. So I think Atcore is something to look at. I don't think that they're going to be like an SMCI where you're going to see overnight growth, because solar is not a new like concept. But in terms of like long-tailed growth, these guys could actually be really good winners, and they're very small right now. So over a course of like
what was the market cap? What was the market cap?
You want to bring up the chart again? Bring up the chart again.
Yeah, sure. I think it's only like 4 billion.
Okay.
Well,
how long have they been in
that's
business?
small of a market cap.
5.37.
See, these are companies, like, once again, I don't know if they have, maybe there is a technological advantage like you're saying, but obviously Enphase has a technological advantage. But these companies are perfect for a dividend portfolio. Even if they don't pay a dividend yet, this is the perfect kind of company that will eventually. So
if you look at it right now, they IPO'd in 2016 at $16.
Are you sharing something? I don't see anything. Are you sharing something?
Carlos, can you share my screen real quick? So they IPO'd in 2016. They've actually grown, and right now they're about $141 a share, which is a $5.3 billion market cap. In terms of financials on a quarter by quarter basis, they're doing about $1 billion. Well, I mean, I told you, like, they had a really strong year in 2021 and 2022 when PVC piping was just through the roof. But, and some of that correction is happening in the short term. But you can see from a net income perspective, if they're doing about $200 million right now, multiply it out by 4, you got $800 million of net income coming in on a market cap company that's only about $5 billion, right? So as their business grows, which I expect to grow, especially with the development around data centers, with the development around chip manufacturing fabs, which are a lot of conduit and piping, that now, and solar as well. Solar, a lot of industries that completely ignore conduit and piping, but this is like one of the building blocks for our basically industrial future. And then when you combine this with the IRA, not your IRA, but the IRA Act,
Inflation Reduction Act.
But I don't
These
know.
guys,
I don't know if that. I don't know.
And
if
it
that,
does the
if that-
opposite
if
of
it covers that.
reducing inflation.
I don't know if that covers that. I don't know if it covers that for commercial install. If the
Say that
piping,
again?
I don't know if the piping and the fittings are covered as part of the IRA. In terms
No,
of
no, they're not. But what
just
it is,
gear, you know.
but what happens is the demand for newer stuff comes in, and so things have to be connected. So let's say right now you have a new data center go up. All that entire data center is going to need conduit and piping all over the place,
right? Regardless.
And so, so that's where these guys benefit, because they're a supplier to the industry that's growing like crazy.
I do like the solar ETF concept, because
you win.
I'm surrounding my portfolio with just future energy. Tesla, Enphase, even SolarEdge now. I've never bought SolarEdge until this downturn, by the way. So I'm finally buying that. And Atcore, I'm going to look more into it. But if they're in the solar game and people are buying it, I don't know yet, honestly. But that's an interesting way to look at it. Like, just surround the whole portfolio with the new future that's happening, because in 10 years, all these companies are going to move up. Like, that's
well, it's like if you're already heavily invested in EV companies, you start looking at lithium mining. If you're already invested in crypto, you start looking at crypto miners. You're like, what companies support the companies that are there, just so everybody kind of moves up together.
For example,
and a little bit of protection.
I'm not big into the lithium thing, I think, but I bought Vail because they have a dividend, and because they do iron ore, which is obviously important for batteries, or it's good.
Well, for everybody, right? It's not just Tesla. Anyone that needs batteries is going to have to need these.
Right. So I'm like, okay, they're going to pay me a dividend while people start ramping up the use of iron ore in terms of battery production, and I'll take it.
All right. So, to not do what happens all the time when AMIT is hosting, let's actually get to the subject of the title of the video, that it's all riding on Nvidia.
Wait, are we putting a link to anyone joining?
Yeah, I'm going to put it on so we can have it in 15
because
minutes.
We have to end. Yeah, we have to end in 15 or so.
I'll put it now. We have to end in 15. But
guys, let's promote this. We're doing a TJ.
Yes.
The Wheel Deal next podcast at 8:00. So that's what we're doing, and we're talking Enphase for a whole hour. For anybody else who wants to see more Enphase,
he's got some specific questions that he wanted answered. Yeah, so I will post the link to that there if you guys want to follow us.
If you could put the link to that, that's great as well.
Yeah, I'll put the link to that. But let's get into the Nvidia earnings, and I might just share this little bit here and just read this. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal. Let me see, it's too small. I'll just read some stuff that was highlighted. The AI trade faces its first major test with Nvidia earnings. We'll go down here. Nvidia added nearly $184 billion in market value on May 25th, the third largest one-day gain by any company in the U.S. Market history, according to the Dow Jones market data. The day before, the company said it expected to book about $11 billion in revenue during the quarter ended in July versus the consensus estimate of about $7 billion. The S&P trades at 2.3 times sales and 18 times earnings. Here we go. Okay. The forecast injected new life into the AI trade and gave markets a lift in a turbulent period. Tech stocks powered by a market-wide surge despite the largest American banking crisis in more than a decade, the threat of a U.S. default, and inflation-fighting campaign by the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates. Nvidia shares have tripled in 2023. Come down a little further. Many of this year's top-performing stocks have benefited from the frenzy. Facebook parent Meta platforms more than doubled, while chip stocks, Advanced Micro Devices, and Lam Research are up more than 50%. The mean price target is now $529, or 22% above Friday's closing price of $432. As 2023 began, the price target was just $146. Nvidia has missed Wall Street's revenue outlook just twice in 5 years, according to FactSet. The main thing to worry about, if anything, is if there's a shortage of GPUs to develop this training. He added that investors might look past any near-term disappointment caused by a shortage if the long-term fundamentals appear intact. Others are worried that a weak outlook could eliminate one of the best reasons to own stocks. I think that's a bit much. We think any outsized disappointment from Nvidia could really jolt the market, said Greg Bassett, CEO of AXS Investment Firm, markets an ETF that gains when Nvidia's share price declines. Investors are seeking consistency, but we are seeing inconsistent behavior. Inconsistent investor expectations about Fed policy, inconsistent earnings, inconsistent inflation prints, and finally, lack of consistency in the geopolitical outlook. So do you guys feel the same? That Nvidia, whereas like Apple was normally like the bellwether stock in terms of how the stock market's going to go, that this week that it's all about Nvidia.
Well, I think, okay, so let's take one step back and evaluate what we saw in the last 6 months when it came to big tech. And the reason why I bring up big tech is because the primary users of GPU acceleration has been big tech, right? So if you look at AI, this whole AI race, while everyone is looking at Nvidia, the primary users of the products, because they're the ones that can afford it, are Meta, which is Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, right? Maybe Apple to a certain degree, I don't know. But for the most part, a lot of the sales have come from these big guys. Like, I'm sure that there are smaller players that are buying GPUs to do their, their local inference training and everything else, which I'm not discounting. But these
Don't
guys
forget
have
all the
been
universities buy a ton because they
right.
have
Right.
clusters.
But the biggest players in terms of buying up these GPUs at these expensive prices have primarily been big tech. In my opinion, big tech is doing a lot of cost rationalization where they've been laying people off and everything else. But the one thing I didn't see was a lot of mention for CapEx about any plans for future CapEx reduction, because I think a lot of them want to have what is that thing called? The lead when it comes to GPU tech. And Nvidia is like the one that's really dominating that market right now. The problem that I'm seeing is that a lot of them do not want to be beholden to Nvidia in the future. So they're developing their own GPU chips, right? I mean, especially for AI and machine learning and training. So while Nvidia right now, this quarter might do actually pretty well, um, in the future, I think big tech will start relying on their own custom architecture, and that may end up being a problem for Nvidia. And the reason why I say that is because Nvidia raised their guidance significantly the last quarter. Um, I don't know in terms of this quarter how they are going to project out guidance for the rest of this year. So if there's any talk of demand falling off, Nvidia is going to collapse on itself. And then the problem is, let's say they weather the storm this quarter. What happens in 2024? Are they still going to see the same demand that they had in 2023? Because remember, this demand a lot of it has been, in my opinion, pulled forward because of the AI boom. If the AI booms any time slows down, Nvidia could end up taking a big hit. And especially because even from the gaming and from the mining side, they haven't necessarily kept up in terms of growth. That could really see Nvidia come down to a more rational price. But that all depends on if you think this AI wave is here to stay and everyone is going to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year to keep buying Nvidia GPUs.
So I think they will, by the way. Big tech is not going to stop buying. And also, the thing is, they haven't bought everything. So I know you're like, oh, demand has been pulled forward, but people have purchase orders out for next year when they're building something else, a new cluster, right? Universities are doing new projects. So they know what's coming down the pipeline. Having said that, first of all, I do think Nvidia is going to keep going to the moon. But in terms of the next year, the stock is overvalued. I agree with you there. Those are two different things. The fact that Nvidia will keep growing and selling more GPUs, and the fact that the stock might come down, these are two completely different things. So I would not buy Nvidia just for that fact, because it should get a reasonable pullback. People should take some profits, and then when it settles down, reconsolidate and start moving up again. But having said that, I do think this AI boom is not stopping for a very long time, Chris. It's not next year. It's not 2025. This is going to keep going.
But the question is, the question is, that's Nvidia as a company, but it is not operating in a bubble. Like I agree with what you guys are saying. Like, yeah, I don't think AI is going away anytime soon. And a lot of these big players, it's now really, this is an example of where a tech company can actually win against another tech company with money. A lot of times it's engineers and whatever. You can win with money if you can have the largest the largest cluster. If you could have the most GPUs, you will be able to advance that technology faster than the others. This is exactly the game that they want to play, and the exact kind of thing that's conducive to a war among tech companies. the bigger question is, we saw, and I personally believe that Nvidia earnings the last quarter is what stopped this massive bleeding that we're seeing now in the markets. So the question is, if they do miss on any one thing, or if they have slightly lower guidance moving forward, do you think that it's going to cause a market-wide crash, or a lot of these companies that have had, say, a 10 or 15% premium because of just mentioning AI on the earnings call, is everyone getting a haircut? That's the question.
Probably, yeah. If they say anything negative, like Chris is saying, like we were projecting something less, or we have less demand in the next, I don't think it's this quarter, but let's say next quarter, then yeah, why wouldn't it go down? Because it's priced for perfection. We know this. It's absolutely
like Tesla. We've seen it with Tesla.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I even sold it, because I thought it was priced for perfection in the 300s. Like it's obviously, it shows you how far things can go out of whack. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
On the downside and the upside. So if you have a real investment thesis, I suck. I really suck at Nvidia. This is the second time I sold it, by the way, and it keeps going up. It really pisses me off.
Yeah, but you sold at a profit, so who gives a shit, man?
Yeah,
That's
I
all
sold
it's-
both times at a
you.
profit, but it's just
Yeah.
annoying. It's just
You got to just
because-
buy calls or something. Like, you can't.
Well, no, I believe in
Don't hold it.
Nvidia. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and I always end up selling all of my Nvidia and then waiting for the dip and buying back. But by then, it actually is still higher. It's always higher than where it's where I got it originally. So my point is, I think anybody who's in it early on, you shouldn't worry. If you bought it at $100 or even before in 2018 or 2017,
You're sitting fine.
I think you're fine, and you could just hold it and just wait for the next 10 years. Nvidia is not going anywhere. I know Chris mentioned that Amazon is doing their own chips and Tesla wants to do their own chips, but these are such long-term projects. I think Nvidia is fine for a very, very long time before this is an actual problem. Because even Elon said, we cannot Dojo. How long have they been working on Dojo, by the way? It's been 3-4 years, and they still can't make something better than just using Nvidia GPUs. So this is a very hard problem for big companies. They will not just scale away from Nvidia. Nvidia will keep growing. It's a multi-trillion-dollar company. Once again, do you buy it today? Maybe not, but it is something you should keep looking at.
Yeah. Can you share my screen real quick, Carlos? This was an article that I posted in our chat, actually. And this is one of the things that, so you can see here, basically the headline was just vulnerable to in-house chip production by Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon. Each one is at a different stage in terms of like their own AI architecture. Google being probably the furthest with their TPUs that are purpose built. But you can see here, NVIDIA's got competition from the guys who've been their biggest
Customers.
Customers. And then you also have to remember that AMD AMD and Broadcom actually partnered, and then even Intel are probably going to get into the game. So I'm not saying that, and like by any means that Nvidia is going down tomorrow morning. Like, that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, in the future, the demand picture might be a little bit more constrained. And the thing is, it makes no sense to pay the prices today if the future demand is going to be constrained, right? So what it is the valuation of Nvidia right now is projecting out a 5-year growth cycle that's just exceptional. So right now, in my opinion, if you're buying Nvidia at $400, you've kind of overpaid, in my opinion. If you want to buy Nvidia,
right, but you're buying it because you think over the next few years the purchase orders will increase. And just to the subject real quick of other companies, it is not as easy to make your own chips in-house. It is a tremendous amount of R&D. You also need the right engineers. And right now you would say that those engineers are not working, say, at Meta or Google or whatever. They're working at NVIDIA. The only company that I think the only company that I think really, really can take them on would be Apple, because they've been developing their own chips forever. And that would be, but they're not really making an AI play in that sense. But it could be something that they do.
You're ignoring your guys are ignoring also. I know we're talking about GPUs, but there's fundamental research that goes on in NVIDIA for like all of this, for graphics, for AI, things that other companies are not doing in the same scale. Obviously, Google is. Okay, I'm not saying Google's not doing that, but there's so many other companies
to come in and compete with them now at this level with where their GPUs are performing. The bar is
but it's also the software. It's a combination. I know we're talking about GPUs like we're talking about. I'm only playing games on it, but they have a whole AI stack. They have, and maybe Rangu would know better actually. If you invite him, ask him. You can tell us about
Rangu.
this.
He's waiting backstage. We're going to bring him on after you.
There you go. You can bring him. Maybe he knows more about this, but there's definitely a bigger play here with NVIDIA than just selling GPUs. That is not why you're just buying them. Okay.
No, I agree. I just like I said, I am trying to see who the ultimate winner in terms of investment is for AI. And the one that I'm picking on, the horse that I'm betting on, and people can bet on multiple horses. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Nvidia has run up a little higher than what the expectations for myself was and a lot of people. But I think the better value proposition, in my opinion, is Google. Google right now is not just doing picks, not just selling the hardware, because they're not selling hardware. What they're essentially doing is providing and renting out the services themselves. And I think they're more of a picks and shovels play who's got so many other business opportunities. But AI cloud is something that I'm super bullish with Google on. And I think Google is going to eventually catch up to the same market cap that Microsoft has right now. And if you think about where Google is trading today versus where Microsoft is trading today, considering that they have very similar operating metrics, with Google being somewhat just a little bit lower on the operating income side, I think Google's like a no-brainer that Google's going to get above 200. So I would say in terms of investment, in terms of total return, if I'm bullish on AI, I think Google will definitely outperform Nvidia over the next, 2-3 years.
Well, that's because Nvidia outperformed everybody over this year.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
the reason.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, what's up,
I
Rango?
guess.
How's it
What's up,
going?
Rango?
You were itching. We got about 10 minutes, and you said you were itching to ask a question.
We got 3
Yeah.
minutes. 3 minutes.
I mean, I still don't get the bear case of Enphase. Like Chris is talking about a lot of stuff, but I still like to know that, the 3 bear case of Enphase. That was my question. But if
The true bear case of Enphase.
yeah, true.
His only bear case is Hoy miles and rates. I mean, that's it.
Rates is like a short-term thing, right? I mean, okay, it goes up. Like Vitaly addressed that already, right? But a true long-term secular bear case, like Tesla coming and taking market share, that I heard.
But once again, that's not a bear. Everybody say
that's not a bear case.
So small, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, I want to hear him out. I do want to test my.
Okay,
so this is Chris. You're asking Chris the real bear case. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So number one, let's just start off with value. Okay, even after the cut down in price that Enphase has had, their valuation is still relatively high.
Can you bring up the metrics right now? Just let's see them. Let's see them.
And especially for a company that's particularly in hardware, hardware typically has lower margins than other things, right? So if you look at most hardware manufacturing companies, they're typically lower in the margins. Right now, Enphase has been able to do very well because they've been able to charge a lot more for their products and actually generate a significant margin compared to other companies that might be in an adjacent field. So as an example, Enphase microinverters are exceptionally more expensive. So any new entrants that come into this can actually undercut them significantly.
They're able to, but real quick, they're not actually that much more expensive. It's definitely more expensive, but it's not like 50% more expensive.
Yeah, this
like
is a misconception that has been.
Well, before let me just finish, and then you guys can.
I can like either address it or whatever. Yeah.
So
I'm letting you finish. Yeah.
So my thing is right now, with margins that are so high, that invites new entrants to come into the market and challenge those specific metrics. And based on the research that I'm doing, you have other microinverter companies that have products that are similar that are coming on the market, maybe not so much in the US, but internationally. One of them, of course, I know it seems like a joke, but Hoy Miles is a competitor.
Let me answer this, Chris, because me and Carlos had a conversation with multiple installers, and we asked them this very question before you were there with the bear case, by the way. Why are you not using these other microinverters that have dual output, quadruple output, this much wattage? They don't want to use it. They're not going to risk their company on some unknown. It's not worth it for them to save 5 cents. It's just not. And this is installers. This is not me and Carlos saying.
Yeah, this is something that again, there's just a fundamentally different business model for a company that requires third-party installers in order to push their product. If you're selling directly to the customer, like Tesla, you can do things that a company like Enphase can. And so Enphase's customer is not the end customer. It's the installers that are basing their entire livelihood on the installation, the price, and the reliability. That's what they're
Right.
It's more about the
right.
reliability because they don't want to come to your house ever again. You have to understand this. That costs them money every time they have to
Right,
roll a truck to you.
but see, that's the same argument that everyone made about so many other industries that, oh, this is the best. No one else is ever going to come in. This is the one that everyone is going to use from now until the end of time. And that is a
Who
complete
says never?
false
I
way of
only need
looking at
5
it.
more years. Who says never?
No, I know, but I'm saying that this is one of those things that you just have to take a step back and look at. This is going to invite competition from other companies. My one thing was in the past, like, does Enphase have any sort of moat that can prevent other companies from coming in outside of the reliability argument? And the
Well,
answer
besides
that
the patents, you mean? that they
even
have?
even the patents that they have are for their specific like niche when it comes to their thing. There are other companies out there that have microinverter technologies that at price points that are very compelling to a lot of people outside of the end phase equation. And especially if you go internationally, those price points are actually something that are a lot more deterministic in terms of people getting things installed. So I'm not saying that Enphase by any means, like their reliability and everything shouldn't be given credit for. But my thing is, if new entrants come into the market, which I'm seeing new entrants starting to come in, Hoy Miles, believe it or not, is a very brand new company into the US space. Okay.
They're not the only one,
They're
by
mo-
the way. I did my due
Yeah.
diligence 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There were other entrants in the market. NEP
Mhm.
is a power company. They have microinverters in the market. This is not something that's new. There are other
Right.
players there.
But look, on the flip side of that, having been on the other side of that, it's not to say that that is something that can last forever, VITALY, because I've seen that. I saw that happen even in our business. What happens is another company comes in and makes the deal so sweet, or they come in with like if they can give you a deal like selling you gear at cost, or if they can guarantee you certain. And I saw this even in my business and in the television industry when it came to competing software platforms. Like Adobe made the deal so sweet that even though they weren't the best actual tool for some facilities, the facilities went with Adobe. And so it's not always what's best, because Adobe has its series of problems, and the problems that you have in that cost a ton of money, and software based problems. But at the end of the day, they made the deal so sweet that they gave them a shot. And some of these other companies can at least try a small percentage of their installs on that. And this is where you'll know that Enphase is in trouble. If it's not even really from Tesla, you'll know Enphase is in trouble if you'll see installers that typically install Enphase at least adopt a small percentage of their installs to SunPower, to Helion, or whatever these companies
You guys are
Just
talking all
trying.
theoreticals because I'm talking to installers right now and asking them questions, like talking to the real people. Why are you still using Enphase? What about SolarEdge? Why don't you recommend this? They go through the whole spiel about why. I go, okay, but there are other products that do microinverters. And I was talking to two installers so far. I'll call more this week as well. And one of them was in business for 20 years. Obviously, Enphase came in 2006. I'm not saying they started with Enphase, but they've been in business doing solar for 20 years. They're like, we're not going to risk our reputation and our 20 years in business on some third party because we've been doing this for 20 years. We can't risk it. So this is what this woman was telling me. Okay. So you're ignoring the actual facts of the matter when the person knows something. He's learned how to do an install. He learned all of this stuff, and then they're just going to go somewhere else. Like that takes so much time and effort.
And to some degree, I agree with you, but this has been something that even happened in the same field with solar, where the initial manufacturers of the panels were so good. People were like, oh, new entrants will never come into the market. The quality of these panels are much better than everyone else. And then what happened? Chinese panel manufacturers came in with heavy subsidies, and they were able to undercut the crap out of American manufacturers and then reliability became a second to pricing power. My thesis on Enphase in terms of pricing is that they will slowly over time lose pricing power because of their competition, not just from microinverters, but also from the adjacent competing technologies of string inverters and solar optimizers that, by the way, will benefit significantly because the IRA gives a shit ton of money to competitors as long as they're manufacturing.
Can I respond with facts?
Okay. Well, before you go, let me just finish. Right now, you're seeing a ton of people making more equipment for solar and a lot of manufacturers starting to bring their supply chains here to the US, meaning that Enphase will not be the only one in the market. These other guys are getting subsidized as well to do manufacturing here in the US, and that may end up causing more competition in this specific field, and then Enphase having to lower margins just to maintain market share. So
Well,
I
just want to point out, I am expecting margins to come down. I expect Enphase to dominate this market by lowering margins, having better technology, innovating at breakneck speeds. We need solar. Solar is supposed to come down another 70-80%. That means Enphase products have to come down 70-80%. This is on the cost curve down. So your bear case is not a bear case, because this is what is happening right now.
But I'll tell you right now, if Enphase is not, I pull up the chart, if Enphase is not at the 40% profit margin, they're getting a haircut in stock price. They could still take a bunch of market share.
Right.
They could still do well. They could still grow. But that's not, doesn't mean that they're going to hit
the same thing happened with Tesla. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Haircuts will come around.
That's the
but
problem.
Don't forget,
with
the revenues will still 10x.
Right.
Okay,
but I agree.
But you know that people focus on profit margins more than anything. They don't want to hear profit. Look at these profit margins: 45%, 44%, 42%. If that's now 30%, even if they have higher revenue and they're selling through more installs, more 4,000 installers, the market's just going to care about profit margins like they do with Tesla. They don't look at the whole story. And
by the way, at the end of the day, the only thing people care about is the free cash flow. Okay, that's actually what's going to matter. So if this keeps increasing,
so I want to address like all the arguments, right? The prices, like the prices of microinverters have come down, but the margins haven't come down. Just FYI, the prices of microinverters have come down. The reason is like once you scale up volume, like your prices do come down. Like to what cost it does make, they just pass on the cost to the consumer, right? Unless demand is so much that like you cannot take it, then you increase prices. That's what happened in 2021. Enphase actually increased prices in 2021 of their batteries and inverters because they just couldn't keep up with demand. Number one, like it's expected that the prices come down, and the prices, like there is the cost curve is like the silicon cost curve is so much obvious. Like as you move to better nanometer, like your supply goes up. Like Enphase is moving from a 40 nanometer from 15 nanometer where more chips are made on the process technology side. So automatically your prices go down like on that front too. And like this and also
this is a valid point. This is a very valid point.
Yeah, they'll keep the gross margins there and the prices will keep coming down, and they'll add more value with the same gross margins. What I'm saying is they'll add more chargers. They might sell chargers at like etc. cost by bundling stuff up. They might add like microgrids. They might add software services, but keep the gross margins the same. Like they'll add more value and give more gross, like keep the gross margins the same. That's how you get pricing like pressure. Like in a secular trend, like smartphone markets, you can see like Apple has added more features and functionalities every year in the last 10 years. But and there has been inflation, and the prices has remained. The iPhone prices have more or less remained the same the last 5 years. $1,000 iPhones have remained $1,000 more or less. They do some stuff with the pricing. They do some stuff with value. They do some stuff with etc. But their gross margins have largely remained the same, unless they are extremely competed against so badly. But the competition has to come up in volume. That's the hard part. Like you cannot compete in price when you don't have enough volumes. Like that's really hard. Like when you're going from I think they're doubling their microinverter production this year, right? Doubling or tripling, right? So when you can double your production, right, and you have such volumes and coming out of the same factory, same footprint,
they're going to 10 million
cost,
a quarter.
Yeah, so
because they're failing up.
Yeah, even if you have pricing pressure, your cost goes down dramatically. And they are doing some stuff with the PCB. They're reducing the number of power chips in their PCB. There's like an obvious cost of they'll go with chips which gives higher yields. There's so many things you can do. You know, it's such a new industry.
The other thing too is as more people get batteries, you need less solar panels because you can store more of that power in the batteries. You understand? So you can actually squeeze more. I wouldn't need as many solar panels if I had more batteries to store some of that power.
You can only
just remember everything that you just said, Rango. Competitors can do the same exact
No, they cannot because they don't have the volume.
Oh my God! You always think a competitor can
the volume. No, the volume are serious too. This is volume. It's the volumes and the quality.
First of all, Ford and GM.
They cannot
hold on, Rango. Hold on, Rango.
3 to 4 years. It takes 3 to 4 years to ramp up volumes. Like that's what you don't understand.
Ford and GM can't do it. why can just some no-name a small manufacturing startup, like, I don't understand why you
Yeah,
think
you
they
need
can do that.
volumes to for it to make sense. Like iPhones
and
are so profitable because of volumes. Like you think of Android and iOS, why are iPhones so profitable? Because they make 50% of the phones themselves on the hardware side. Like some Chinese copy can like undercut on the price, yes. They cannot do it profitably, number one, and number two, they don't have enough volumes to even supply. Suddenly say like Huawei gets like 10 million, 20 million, or 200 million orders. They don't have enough volumes to support it, dude. They just don't get it. But even if they don't get it, they can supply it. That's the same case here.
I think this is something that's going to play out over the next few years. I think we are significantly underappreciating the level of manufacturing that might be coming out in the future. And there's already, and these are some of these companies, especially these Chinese companies, they have figured out high volume production to another degree. It's not
No,
even
I
like
agree.
they can't do it. You know, the problem is when it comes to companies like this, they are likely to undercut Enphase to such a big degree that is going to cause a natural decrease in prices. That's the argument that I'm seeing. And the thing is, yes, while adoption right now may be exceptionally low for them, in the future, it's going to take some time. And it's going to impact Enphase and its future growth
Chris,
prospects. Yeah.
everyone
Again,
eventually, hold on.
Again, it's
Everyone,
always buy and
Mango, hold
validate.
on.
You have to keep validating your thesis. Like I agree, like anything can happen, right? You have to keep validating your thesis, but there is like a 3 to 4 year lag time. So you can obviously see if somebody is ramping up production. And also you need to match supply with demand. It's not like tomorrow I decide to ramp up like 50 million microinverters and then I can have 50 million in inventory and sell through that. That's not possible. You need to match supply and demand. You can only do it at a certain pace. And you have to like take one market and then like you have to like sell through that whole market and then you expand and expand and expand. You know what Enphase is doing? Same exact thing. They're already doing that. So like they are also expanding. And once you sell the microinverters to a customer, you're there. You're like the solar panels are there for the next 20 years. You can monetize it through software. Like
solar panels are there for the next 40 years,
40 years, 20. I'm being like, it's minimum. There once you cannot go out, you cannot go out of that. And it's very obvious over the guy who's installed a solar panel. He'd be like, how many times I've been called up? Like how many, like how comfortable are they is like it shows up in data. I mean obviously there's never say never. Like competition can obviously come, especially if you have high margins, but are they doing enough to like fend off that? I think they are pretty good engineers, dude. Like they are very good engineers.
I think that they are
and
very
scale.
talented in terms of engineering, but there are certain innovations that I'm seeing happening in the field and in the sector. That's something that just, I would say, keep an eye on. But if the valuation of Enphase gets low enough, then yeah, I might be an interested buyer. But even at these prices, they're in their valuation is still in a 33 PE. Depending on industry you're talking about, this is a hardware.
Well, I want to know, when are you buying?
Valuation.
What's your new value? We have to end the podcast because we have to leave. But what's your new value?
I would say under 100 now.
Okay,
I'd
boom, got it.
now.
Listen, I'd buy two. Okay, both of us are buying under 100. Let's do this.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Carlos, you muted.
Yeah, if I'd love to go over Nvidia. It's a lot of. I mean, Nvidia is doing.
We have to go.
Yeah, we have to go.
I mean,
later. But it's so much stuff they are doing on Nvidia side. Like so much. It's like
we're actually going to we're going to do a podcast with TJ the Wheel Deal on his channel, and it'll be specifically about Enphase, like Enphase. The podcast wasn't. So if you want to join us on that, actually I'll post the link to that. But I will say, where I think KRIS has a point, and maybe he's not a point that he's necessarily making, is that just much like Tesla operating for 10 years with relatively no competition because people didn't take them seriously, once someone comes in and improves the market and go, oh my God, there's a fuck ton of money to be made here. How do we get a piece of that? You start to invite a bunch of other predatory companies, right? And 100%. So what I think you're seeing now is, even with the rates, Enphase has been performing pretty well, even with rates being high, and people still see them as the leader. It does lead to a point where it can invite some competition where there normally wasn't. And even if they're not successful, it does put pressure on them in places where they weren't. With respect to like profit.
I mean, that means the market's growing.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the market can be growing, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're not just going to operate forever, and no one's going to see Enphase take over the whole thing and not be challenged, even from other legacy, even from other companies like just SolarEdge and Tesla. Like people
Yeah.
are like, they're making a fuck ton of money. They're printing all this freaking money. They're in some of the same markets. People in similar businesses might say, you know what? Why not? Hyundai, Honda, whatever it is.
Okay,
The guy's making the solar panels. You know what
All
I
right,
mean?
Guys,
we gotta go.
I have to go. Yeah, I have to go. But I want to just close out saying one thing. During
Okay.
high interest rates environments, incumbents become stronger, not weaker, and new entrants. It's harder to enter new markets.
Yes. When it's harder
Just-
for Enphase, it's
Yeah.
way harder for everybody else.
Right.
Okay.
During high
See you-
interest rate environments. I just
See you
want
on
to
the
say
next one, everybody.
Yeah.
Later, guys.
Thank you, everybody. 200 people for showing up. Hit like and subscribe, and we will see you on
Send me the link. I don't know if I have the
I just
link.
put
for
it.
the
I
next-
just put it in the chat, but if
Okay.
not, I'll post it on the WhatsApp.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Good, everybody. Bye.
All right, bye.